The air was heavy with the weight of unspoken stories as the military working dog, known affectionately as Rex by his unit, stood in the shadow of the shelter's cold, metal bars. His once bright eyes were dulled by the memories of combat, and the scars on his body told tales no human could ever fully comprehend. Rex had served heroically overseas, finding explosives, chasing threats, and saving lives beside his handlers. Without a doubt, he had been a soldier in every sense of the word. But now, the very skills that had made him a hero also led to his downfall. After returning from deployment, Rex had exhibited extreme anxiety and aggression, a stark transformation from the loyal companion who had risked everything for his team. In one particular incident that shook his handlers to their core, Rex reacted aggressively during training exercises, leading to the shocking decision to classify him as dangerously aggressive. The suspension of his military career was soon followed by an inevitable date on the shelter's calendar: euthanasia. As Rex paced in his small kennel, his thoughts were mixed with confusion and fear. He didn't understand why he ended up here after all he'd done for his country. The other dogs barked nearby, some wagging their tails with hope for new families, while Rex remained silent, weighed down by an unshakable past. Across town, retired SEAL handler Mike Thompson received the dreadful news. After so many years serving alongside brave dogs like Rex, he felt a responsibility ignite within him, a call he couldn't ignore. Mike spent countless nights dreaming about his time in service and the dogs who fought alongside him. Those memories now seemed to plead for something more than just acceptance at the local shelter. They begged for understanding and compassion. Fueled by determination, Mike drove to the shelter and requested the incident file detailing Rex's behavior. He sensed that reading it would be a necessary first step toward helping Rex. Upon receiving the file and sitting down at his cluttered kitchen table that night, he immersed himself in the paperwork before him. The words leaped off the page, painting a picture that sent chills down his spine. 3 times he read through the accounts written by different handlers, each focusing on moments of weakness and fear displayed by Rex. They described how he lashed out in what they perceived as madness and aggression. Desperation replaced compassion in their accounts. They viewed him not as a soldier but as a broken animal beyond repair. But Mike knew better. As he leaned back in his chair, he reflected deeply on Rex's training and instincts that had been finely honed under stressful conditions. He remembered moments in combat when he too had to rely on instinct rather than instruction, times when adrenaline flooded their systems and clarity vanished in the face of danger. He began to see Rex not as a dog gone rogue but as a soldier responding exactly as he had trained, alert, defensive, ready to protect. Hours passed as he exhausted every detail from both sides of the argument, a process that would require more than just passionate appeal. It required facts intertwined with experience. On paper, it seemed hopeless. However, in his heart, he felt an undeniable connection to this brave dog whose life rested precariously on impending decisions. Mike understood that he hardly had any time left. Only 72 hours remained to demonstrate that Rex's actions were not born out of madness but were rather calculated responses from intense training sessions under duress. It was not just about saving Rex, it was about altering perspectives and changing hearts. Preparing for an uphill battle against a tide of firmly held beliefs would test Mike's resolve. But if Mike could convince even one person on the board to see the soldier behind the bark and bite, maybe there was still hope for Rex. With renewed determination coursing through him, Mike decided it was time to act, not just speak, about what it truly meant to be a soldier and possibly save a fellow warrior from an unjust fate that was driven by misunderstanding and fear. A journey lay ahead that intertwined their paths deeply. 2 soldiers, one passed, and time was running short. Mike Thompson sat at his cluttered kitchen table, the incident file lying open before him. The dim light overhead cast shadows that danced along the walls, reflecting his inner turmoil. This was not just another day for Mike, it was a moment filled with urgency and purpose. He had spent years as a Navy SEAL, but it was his relationship with military dogs that truly defined him. Growing up, Mike wasn't like most kids. While others were playing with action figures or riding their bikes, he found solace in a small dog shelter near his home. That was where he first met a scruffy mutt named Max. With wild fur and an adventurous spirit, Max became Mike's best friend and confidant. Their bond sparked something deep within Mike, an understanding that animals, especially those who serve, share an unbreakable connection with humans. When Mike enlisted in the Navy, he encountered that bond again with working dogs expertly trained to assist on missions. These dogs weren't mere pets, they were partners in every sense of the word. Each dog came equipped with instincts that could make crucial decisions amid chaos, instincts honed through rigorous training and real-life experiences. As a handler, Mike quickly learned how to communicate without words, using subtle gestures and shared moments of trust. One particular mission stood out as a cornerstone of his career. It was in a remote village overseas where surroundings were fraught with danger. An explosives detection dog named Buddy worked alongside him on this sensitive patrol. During the operation, Buddy's keen instincts detected hidden explosives just moments before they could have turned into a disaster for their team. The bond they shared during that tense standoff solidified Mike's belief in these remarkable animals and reaffirmed his commitment to their well-being. After retiring from active duty, Mike continued to advocate for former military dogs like Rex. He became involved in several organizations dedicated to helping these brave animals find new homes or receive the care they needed after their service ended. Many handlers returned home carrying invisible scars from war, the memories tied not just to human companions but also to the loyal canines who had shared their journeys. Witnessing Rex's struggle felt personal for Mike. It was a haunting reminder of what Buddy could have faced if his fate had taken a different turn. It infuriated him to see how quickly society disregarded the potential of these dogs once they exhibited behaviors deemed problematic. For so many people, aggression signaled failure. They failed to see that it often stemmed from fear and trauma, a mirror reflecting their own unprocessed experiences. Mike knew he had a fight ahead of him, not only for Rex but to change perceptions about military dogs in general. He recalled numerous stories of those who bravely served beside soldiers only to be misunderstood when they returned home. The clock was ticking, and many would dismiss Rex as dangerous without seeing the soldier within, a soldier shaped by past experiences much like Mike himself. Though uncertain about how the board would respond, Mike believed firmly that bringing Rex's story forward required more than facts. It demanded compassion and understanding of shared histories between veterans and their canine counterparts. Determined not to let Rex's life slip away unnoticed, Mike began preparing for his presentation with fervor. Late into the night, he dug through photographs from his own military service, pictures of heroic moments shared with dogs like Buddy. Each snapshot reminded him of loyalty and courage effortlessly bonded through trust alone, qualities that continued to exist even in the tough faces contorted by pain and struggle. As he gathered anecdotes about other military dogs who faced similar challenges after returning home, Mike realized he wasn't just fighting for Rex, he was advocating for all who had served under harrowing circumstances, human and canine alike. The connection between them rang clear. Both men and dogs emerged transformed from their battles against external enemies, and now they stood united against misunderstandings lurking within society's collective heart. As thoughts poured through his mind like ink on paper, one truth echoed louder than ever: saving Rex meant shining a light on countless others yearning for understanding amid darkness. Time might be short, but hope burned bright within the veteran's resolve as he readied himself for battle, not just for one dog's life but for every soldier left behind in silence. The notice of euthanasia hit Mike Thompson like a cold wave, washing over him with an icy grip that left him momentarily breathless. He stared at the letter in his hand, the words blurring together as his heart raced. This couldn't be happening, not to Rex. The dog had risked his life for their country, faced danger head-on, and now, he was marked for death because of a single moment of fear and confusion. Mike felt an avalanche of emotions crashing down on him: anger, sadness, determination. It was infuriating to think how quickly society could label a brave animal as dangerous without understanding the circumstances. In his mind, he pictured Rex, his strong muscles, alert eyes, and unwavering loyalty. This was not an aggressive monster, this was a soldier shaped by training and trauma. He thought back to his own service, recalling moments where fear had taken over during missions. There were times when he'd reacted out of instinct, pushing against the odds to protect those he loved. He suddenly realized that Rex had experienced similar pressures, unable to process fear while facing threats in combat environments. Why couldn't others see that beneath the surface of Rex's behavior lay a loyal spirit? With newfound resolve coursing through him, Mike sprang into action. He couldn't just sit back and let this happen. He had to fight not just for Rex but also for every military dog that faced misunderstanding and fear after their service. He quickly grabbed his phone and called the shelter to request the incident file detailing the circumstances surrounding Rex's behavior. "Yes, I need the incident report for Rex," he stated firmly when the receptionist answered. "It's urgent." The receptionist hesitated before agreeing to prepare it for him. Mike felt a mix of relief and urgency wash over him. He needed to read every detail possible to understand what had occurred and how to change perceptions about Rex. Knowing time was running out intensified every heartbeat. While waiting for the file, Mike couldn't shake the sense of dread tightening in his stomach. What if it was too late? What if they viewed Rex solely as a threat and not as a victim of circumstance? The thought gnawed at him relentlessly. Images of Rex pacing in his kennel swirled in his mind, confused and frightened, while he hoped desperately that someone would recognize a warrior deserving empathy rather than condemnation. When he finally received the incident file, Mike rushed home, cradling it like it contained precious treasure. He opened it immediately at his kitchen table under the dim light he'd left on earlier, a space cluttered with memories of past missions that now felt even more significant. As he flipped through each page, Mike's heart sank further with every line. Accounts from other handlers painted grim pictures of panic and aggression from Rex during training exercises. Their words were laced with fear that replaced understanding and compassion. The reports depicted a broken animal rather than a loyal soldier responding naturally to overwhelming stress. Reading their accounts multiple times only deepened his sense of urgency. They described Rex as dangerous, labeling his reactions as madness without giving credence to the context of combat training that had shaped him. Yet within the dry reports, Mike could feel Rex's spirit, the dog who would charge into danger without hesitation alongside his human partner. Realizing he needed to prepare a counterargument that included both emotion and facts, Mike resolved to gather testimonies from other handlers who understood what these dogs encountered on missions firsthand. The next few hours would be critical. He needed every piece of evidence to advocate not only for Rex but for all military dogs unjustly dismissed after their service ended. Fueled by an unwavering commitment to save Rex, Mike began formulating a plan. He envisioned a presentation for the shelter board where he could share Rex's story alongside stories of other brave dogs who faced similar challenges upon returning home. By bringing forth these narratives, Mike believed he could evoke compassion in those who needed convincing. Time pressed on mercilessly as Mike dug through old photographs from his military days, pictures showcasing moments where deep connections were forged between handler and dog during intense situations. Each image served as a reminder that these dogs were more than mere assets, they were warriors deserving respect and understanding. In this moment of reflection and preparation, Mike understood all too well that saving Rex meant more than just saving one dog's life, it meant shining a light on all who fought valiantly beside humans but were left in silence afterward. The stakes were high, but so was hope. Driven by love for these courageous animals, he knew he wasn't merely advocating for one canine soldier but standing up for an entire legacy that deserved recognition and compassion in their darkest hours. Mike sat at his kitchen table, the incident file spread out before him like a jigsaw puzzle missing crucial pieces. The dim light overhead flickered as he prepared to dive into the words written by those who had seen Rex during his moment of crisis. He knew that understanding the reports was essential if he were to mount a proper defense for the dog he believed was wrongly judged. As he flipped through the pages, Mike noticed that each handler had their own perspective on Rex's behavior, yet they all seemed to converge on one conclusion: Rex was broken, a danger to himself and others. Their accounts were filled with expert terminology and clinical assessments, but beneath the surface lay fear, a fear that overshadowed any compassion they might have otherwise shown. The first testimony came from a young handler named Jake, who wrote about an incident during a training exercise where Rex had reacted aggressively and unpredictably when startled by a loud noise. "Rex lunged at me," Jake wrote. "His teeth bared, and I felt helpless in front of this animal that I once trusted completely." Mike winced at the description. He could picture the scene vividly, Rex reacting instinctively to a sudden threat in a world that often left no room for error. It wasn't madness, it was survival. Another handler, Melissa, shared her experience from the same training session. "I've never seen such aggression in Rex before," she reported. "He has become unpredictable, and I fear for my safety and the safety of others if we continue his training." Her words echoed through Mike's mind. She defined Rex solely by that moment without considering what had led them there: the chaos of deployment, the relentless training demands, and perhaps unprocessed trauma too heavy for anyone to bear. One report even mentioned how during a subsequent evaluation session, Rex showed signs of extreme agitation when introduced to new stimuli. A simple plastic bottle falling over triggered his reaction this time. The handlers noted his response as further evidence of behavioral issues rather than what it truly represented: an animal still grappling with demons born from service. Each account added another layer of despair to Mike's heart. How could these handlers, people who should understand his bond with the dog, fail to grasp that beneath this aggressive veneer lay layers of bravery forged by years in high-stress environments? The reports failed to acknowledge that aggression often masked fear, just as it sometimes did in those with human scars from combat. Mike leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by the gravity of each testimony. They painted Rex as an animal completely beyond redemption, not just dangerous but irreparably broken. Yet each line reaffirmed what Mike believed, that Rex's reactions echoed those of any soldier thrust into life-and-death situations without warning or preparation. As he continued reading through the file, Mike stumbled upon instances where handlers questioned whether Rex could rehabilitate at all. Phrases like lost cause and better off euthanized lingered ominously in his thoughts like dark clouds threatening rain. It sent waves of anger surging within him. How could anyone make such sweeping judgments without recognizing the deeper reasons for Rex's fear-laden responses? Naturally driven by empathy towards both humans and animals who had served their country honorably made these assessments feel like betrayals against their shared experiences on battlefields far removed from home comforts. Ultimately, Mike understood what he needed to do: dispel these narratives through first-hand experience rather than mere written accounts distorted by misunderstanding and dread. He felt an urgent need not only to save Rex but also to elevate his story above those limiting labels that refused acknowledgement of everything this brave dog had endured. With renewed determination coursing through him like electricity sparking purpose into action, Mike resolved to gather testimonies from other handlers who recognized Rex's struggles not as weaknesses but as remnants of battles fought on hidden fronts. His mind raced with ideas about how best to present these accounts, to offer a glimpse into the loyalty buried alongside rage, to soften hard hearts with poignant insights rather than mere statistics or data points. This was going to be an uphill battle against perceptions forged from quick judgments born out of fear, a fight worth every ounce of strength he possessed. Because saving Rex wasn't simply about fighting for one dog's life, it meant honoring their brothers in arms, both fur-covered companions and human soldiers alike, and proving their legacy deserved recognition even amidst misunderstanding and darkness. Each word chosen would ultimately reflect not just on Rex but on countless unsung heroes whose stories remained untold because society preferred simplicity over understanding complexities born from service in difficult times. And as night began settling around him while shadows flickered over papers cluttering the table, each representing hope intertwined with heartache, Mike found clarity amidst chaos. Empathy held power over judgment, understanding always triumphed over fear, and together they could rewrite narratives long deemed immutable. Mike Thompson took a deep breath and steeled himself for what was to come. He knew that the next step in his fight for Rex required more than just reviewing the incident file, it needed an understanding of perspective. As he prepared to advocate for the dog he saw as a soldier, not a danger, he reflected on the contrasting viewpoints surrounding Rex's actions. While other handlers labeled Rex's behavior as aggressive and unpredictable, Mike recognized those same actions as instinctual responses born from intense training in high-stress situations. He recalled how, during his own service, there were moments when fear could transform any soldier into a fierce protector, driven by adrenaline and honed instincts. For Mike, aggression didn't equate to danger, it often signified survival, a concept anyone who had faced life-threatening circumstances would understand. One of the most poignant moments during his training with military dogs came flooding back to him. There had been an exercise in which Buddy, his explosives detection dog, had been startled by a loud noise. Instead of cowering, Buddy had sprung into action, reacting swiftly to protect himself and Mike. In that moment, it was not just instinct guiding his actions but also years of preparation for high-stakes scenarios where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. Mike could easily see how Rex's similar reaction stemmed from that same deep-seated training. As he continued mulling over the incident file, Mike began plotting how to clearly present this perspective to the shelter board. He understood that words alone might fall short, emotions would need to ripple through his presentation if he wished to change their minds about Rex. Mike envisioned sharing stories of military dogs responding logically under pressure, stories that showcased not just their aggression but their loyalty and protective instincts. Reflecting on the incident reports again, Mike noted how fear clouded the judgment of Rex's handlers. They viewed aggression through a narrow lens, misinterpreting his reactions without considering what might trigger them. As he read through each statement closely, he imagined each handler witnessing their own dog. Perhaps there was a moment when they too acted out in fear or panic. It was these types of connections he needed to weave into his argument, stories that humanized both soldier and canine alike. To reinforce his points, Mike decided it was crucial to gather testimonies from fellow handlers who had seen Rex in training sessions or missions before any incidents occurred. He wanted voices that conveyed compassion instead of judgment, people who could highlight Rex's dedication and reliability in times of crisis rather than painting him as a broken creature beyond hope. The more he thought about it, the more certain Mike became that this wasn't just about advocating for one dog, it was also about rewriting narratives surrounding all military working dogs. He felt a sense of responsibility to reshape common misconceptions, that aggression could arise from trauma rather than malice and that loyalty often accompanied courage even in the face of overwhelming fear. With clarity sharpening his focus, Mike reached out to other veterans who had worked with military dogs during their service. Each conversation brought forth memories filled with camaraderie and respect for those canine companions who had risked everything alongside them. He gathered accounts where dogs faced seemingly insurmountable odds but still exhibited unwavering loyalty even when overwhelmed by chaos. In one story shared by a fellow handler named Tom, he recounted a moment when his dog had lost control amidst the chaotic sounds of battle. "He didn't lash out at me but sought cover instead," Tom explained. "It was like watching a soldier react instinctively to save himself and me too." Such insights painted an entirely different picture of what Rex might have experienced, one where fear transformed into powerful reactions guided by years of service and intense training. As Mike pieced together these accounts into a cohesive narrative, he envisioned how they would blend with his own experiences, moments when he too faced fear head-on yet retained the loyalty instilled during rigorous training exercises. By the time he stood before the shelter board, he would reveal not just facts but heartfelt stories showcasing the complex nature of military dogs, their fears intertwined with dedication as they trod down paths few could understand. Time ticked away relentlessly as Mike dedicated every waking hour to this cause, fueled by hope for Rex and all military dogs fighting similar battles against misunderstanding and isolation. Each story gathered, every piece of evidence compiled would strengthen their case, a testament not just to one dog's worthiness but rather a tribute honoring countless unsung heroes hidden beneath labels ill-fitting and unjust. With renewed determination coursing through his veins like fire ignited within him, Mike felt confident that change was possible. He believed in the power of empathy over harsh judgments, a belief capable of bridging gaps between misunderstandings nurtured over time from fear alone. And as he prepared himself for battle against these misconceptions surrounding Rex's behavior, Mike embraced purpose. Every word spoken would reflect loyalty shared between the brave souls bound by service, human and canine united against adversity's bitter tide. As Mike Thompson prepared for his presentation, he found himself drifting into memories from his own military past, moments that echoed both the chaos of combat and the unwavering loyalty of his canine partners. The similarities between his experiences and Rex's story became strikingly clear, layering an emotional weight on his mission to save the dog. He remembered one specific operation when he was still a young SEAL, deployed in a tense environment rife with danger. The team had been tasked with searching for explosives hidden in an area known for recent attacks. The atmosphere was thick with unease as they moved cautiously, alert for any signs of trouble. Mike had been paired with Buddy, his explosives detection dog, whose keen instincts made him a valuable asset. The moment that stood out most vividly to Mike was when they were ambushed during their search. The sound of gunfire erupted unexpectedly, sending adrenaline coursing through their veins. As bullets ricocheted around them, Buddy instinctively reacted, his training kicking in as he positioned himself protectively between Mike and the incoming threat. Watching the dog act not out of fear but from a deep-seated desire to protect him solidified the bond they shared. "Stay low!" Mike shouted, but Buddy was already covering him, displaying a fierce loyalty that transcended words. They managed to find cover together, the chaos swirling around them as they strategized their next move. It was during these moments, when survival instincts took precedence over fear, that Mike grasped how deeply trained responses could manifest as actions perceived by others as aggression. A wave of empathy washed over Mike as he recalled how easily others misinterpreted Buddy's fierce reactions during that ambush. Back at the base, some in command had raised concerns about whether Buddy had become too aggressive or unpredictable following the confrontation. But Mike knew better. Buddy's instinct to shield him from danger came from his training as a soldier, not some flaw in character. Memories flowed like a river of shared experiences as Mike continued to reflect on Rex's journey. He envisioned the turmoil Rex must have felt during critical situations, like when he last apprehended a suspect while on deployment. The dog chased shadows on the battlefield, running into chaos fueled by loyalty to his handlers. What happened next could easily be catalogued under incidents labeled aggressive without taking the context into account. In another flashback, Mike recalled attending a vet appointment with Buddy after a particularly harrowing operation. The vet had cautioned about signs of stress-related aggression in dogs who fought through intense scenarios day after day, a topic that resonated painfully with Mike now as he considered Rex's fate. He realized that just like soldiers dealing with post-traumatic stress, dogs too bore scars visible only to those who understood their plight. This parallel struck Mike with immense clarity. Both soldier and canine experienced early trauma born from relentless pressure, the fight for survival amplifying every sensory experience until instinct took over any rational thought process. He began weaving these flashbacks into the narrative he envisioned presenting to the shelter board. He would showcase stories not only from his time working with Buddy but also from other handlers who encountered similar moments where instinct collided with high-stakes situations resulting in misunderstood behavior later wrongly judged by those unfamiliar with life in combat zones. The echoes of years spent straddling two worlds, the military life filled with tattoos of bravery and sacrifice contrasted against moments shrouded in misunderstanding, fueled Mike's resolve to convey Rex's truth. He was determined to portray Rex not just as another statistic but as a brave warrior conditioned by experiences few could comprehend. With each recollection emerging from deep within him, Mike grew more confident that his own history intertwined seamlessly with Rex's and that camaraderie forged through shared suffering would serve as the cornerstone of his defense. His memories united them like threads weaving together into a broader tapestry, their fates forever altered by time spent facing adversity head-on. Time slipped away from him as he sat revisiting these powerful memories yet again, each reminiscent moment stoking embers of hope within him for Rex's future despite external pressures trying to extinguish it altogether. It became increasingly clear how vital it was for others to see beyond surface behaviors and recognize loyalty entwined with courage rather than simplistic labels. In this moment of reflection, Mike committed himself once more to fighting for Rex, a dog whose experiences mirrored his own, as pillars propped against waves crashing down upon them both. With renewed determination brewing within his heart alongside each tale drawn from personal struggles amidst combat fears intertwined across both species, he prepared to step forward into advocacy not just for one life hanging in balance but for countless canine heroes waiting silently on the other side of judgment's heavy hand. The clock was ticking mercilessly, each tick echoing louder in Mike Thompson's mind as he faced the reality of the looming deadline. With only 72 hours remaining to present his case to the shelter board, urgency wrapped around him like a thick fog, pressing him to act without hesitation. The weight of this time constraint hung heavily. It wasn't just about Rex's future, it was a fight against misconceptions surrounding all military working dogs. Mike knew that every moment counted, and he felt the adrenaline surge through him as he organized his thoughts and materials. With the euthanasia already scheduled, there was little room for error. The idea of Rex being taken from this world before he even had a chance to be understood sent shivers down Mike's spine. He could not let that happen, especially when Rex's past mirrored his own in so many ways. As Mike gathered testimonies from other handlers who had worked with Rex throughout his career, he felt a mix of emotions, hope intertwined with anxiety. Each handler's story contributed pieces to the puzzle he needed to complete before standing before the board. He envisioned presenting a narrative that would humanize Rex, showcasing not just his instinctual reactions but also the loyalty and bravery that defined him. Each passing hour intensified his focus as he meticulously crafted a presentation aimed at shifting perceptions deeply rooted in fear. Mike understood that the shelter board might be viewing Rex through a lens clouded by misunderstanding, therefore, it became paramount to dismantle those biases through compelling storytelling combined with factual evidence. In addition to gathering testimonials, Mike began compiling video footage from Rex's time on deployment, moments where the dog shone like a true hero rather than an aggressive animal. He remembered how Rex had successfully completed missions and protected fellow soldiers amidst chaos and danger. These images would serve as powerful reminders of how dedicated Rex was throughout his career, highlighting the things people often neglected when labeling him. Yet amid this whirlwind of preparation lay moments of doubt creeping into Mike's heart. What if the board remained unmoved by his passion? What if they dismissed Rex as just another case file rather than seeing him for what he truly was, a soldier deserving compassion? Those thoughts haunted Mike during sleepless nights filled with relentless anxiety about what might transpire at that crucial meeting. Determined not to succumb to fear, he threw himself deeper into research around military dogs and their post-service challenges. Every statistic, study, or anecdote served both as ammunition for his argument and as fuel for his motivation to see Rex live, not merely as an animal but as a soldier who bore scars few could comprehend. As time trickled away, Mike reminded himself of his bond with Buddy, their shared experiences on dangerous missions mirrored so perfectly by Rex's own journey. It dawned on him that if he could frame Randy's story alongside these broader narratives about military dogs facing similar misunderstandings after service, maybe then they would grasp what loyalty truly looked like beneath moments perceived as aggression. With each piece steadily coming together, the testimonials forming a coherent narrative arc alongside visual evidence, Mike started envisioning how it all would unfold in front of the board members 3 days later. Clarity washed over him. This wasn't simply about saving one dog's life. It was about lighting up stories woven together across many years serving side by side against adversity. The night before presentation day found Mike poring over every detail one last time, his heart racing while reviewing notes stacked haphazardly on his desk illuminated by soft lamplight filtering through shadows cast across worn pages filled with hopes for change. He visualized standing tall before those unfamiliar faces representing authority while advocating fiercely for someone else unable to speak for himself. As dawn approached on presentation day, there was no longer any doubt within him. Every second spent preparing alongside memories forged through battle came fueled by something much deeper than mere urgency. It stemmed from love and respect for those who wore service uniforms, both human and canine alike. With determination steady inside him like an unyielding flame lit against rising tides, Mike steeled himself. Whatever happened next rested upon well-crafted words. Yet behind each phrase stood countless unsung heroes yearning for acknowledgement, their legacies waiting patiently beyond judgment's heavy hand, ready once again reclaim their rightful place within history's embrace long denied by ignorance born out of fear alone. With the deadline fast approaching and a sense of urgency fueling his efforts, Mike Thompson focused on developing a clear strategy to prove that Rex's behavior was justified based on his training and experiences in combat situations. Mike understood that to sway the shelter board, he needed to construct an argument that not only highlighted Rex's loyalty but also contextualized his actions within the framework of military service. Mike began by outlining key points that would effectively convey his message. First, he needed to emphasize the rigorous training military dogs undergo. These dogs are not only trained to detect explosives or apprehend suspects, they are conditioned to respond to an array of high-stress scenarios that can trigger fight-or-flight responses. He planned to draw parallels between how soldiers react under pressure and how Rex, as a military working dog, had been trained to do the same. Next, Mike reflected on the nature of aggression in dogs, particularly military dogs like Rex. He knew that aggression was often misunderstood. While others might see Rex's reactions as dangerous, Mike aimed to frame them as instinctual responses born from years of service and experience in volatile situations. To support this point, he gathered data and research on canine behavior, especially the effects of combat stress on both soldiers and dogs. He compiled studies showing that many military dogs experience stress and anxiety after returning from deployment, similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, in humans. In addition to academic research, Mike sought to include first-hand testimonies from fellow handlers who could provide insight into Rex's character. He envisioned their stories detailing how Rex had performed admirably in past missions, showcasing his bravery and dedication. These accounts would serve as crucial evidence that Rex's response during the incident labeled as aggressive stemmed from a place of protectiveness rather than malice. As he continued refining his argument, Mike considered the importance of emotional storytelling. He understood that to connect with the shelter board members, he needed to present Rex not just as a case number but as a dog with a history, a soldier who had faced real danger and experienced trauma. By humanizing Rex's story, Mike hoped to evoke empathy from those who might otherwise dismiss him as merely aggressive. To solidify his strategy, Mike decided to create a visual presentation alongside his spoken narrative. He gathered video footage from Rex's deployment, moments captured in action where he fearlessly executed his duties while working alongside soldiers in high-pressure environments. These clips would paint a vivid picture of Rex's skills and loyalty, emphasizing how he had always been there for his team when it mattered most. The presentation would also include a section dedicated to explaining how misunderstandings about canine behavior can lead to tragic outcomes. Mike could share examples of other military dogs who faced similar challenges upon returning home, dogs who were misjudged due to their instinctual reactions stemming from past traumas. By illustrating these parallels, he aimed to create a compelling case for why Rex deserved understanding rather than condemnation. As he aligned his materials in preparation for the big day, Mike felt a surge of confidence. This was not just about saving one dog, it was about challenging misconceptions surrounding all military working dogs and advocating for their rights to be treated with dignity and compassion after serving their country. He remembered the countless stories shared by fellow veterans, stories filled with camaraderie and respect for their canine partners who had fought bravely by their side. Each narrative served as fuel for his resolve, strengthening his belief that if he could convey the truth about Rex's actions rooted in loyalty and training, perhaps they could save not just Rex but also change how society viewed military dogs. With determination coursing through him like adrenaline before a mission, Mike practiced delivering his presentation late into the night. He wanted every word chosen carefully, every emotion conveyed authentically. He envisioned standing before the board members not just as an advocate for Rex but as a voice for all those who had served honorably yet silently suffered from misunderstanding. In those final hours before presenting his case, Mike felt a deep sense of purpose settling into his bones. He was ready to fight for Rex and every unsung hero like him, ready to illuminate their stories beyond judgment's heavy hand and reclaim their rightful place within the narrative of courage and sacrifice that defined their service alongside human soldiers in combat zones around the world. As the hours slipped away, Mike Thompson recognized that he couldn't face this battle alone. He needed allies, fellow handlers who understood the unique bond between military dogs and their human partners, and who could lend their voices to bolster his case for Rex. With a sense of urgency, he reached out to former colleagues and friends from his days in service, knowing they could provide invaluable insight into Rex's mindset and experiences. Mike started by contacting Tom, a fellow handler who had worked with him during their deployment. They had shared countless missions together, relying on their dogs to navigate dangerous situations. Tom's dog, Max, was known for his exceptional ability to detect explosives under pressure, and Mike hoped that Tom would recognize the parallel struggles they faced when returning home. "Hey, Tom," Mike said when Tom answered. "I need your help with something important. It's about Rex." After explaining the situation and Rex's impending euthanasia, Mike could hear the concern in Tom's voice. "That's terrible. Rex deserves a chance. What do you need from me?" "I need you to share your experiences with Rex, how you've seen him work in the field, how he's always been there for his team," Mike replied earnestly. "Your testimony could help illustrate the loyalty and bravery we know these dogs possess." Tom agreed without hesitation, ready to stand beside Mike in this critical fight. "Count me in," he said. "I'll put together everything I can remember about Rex. He's always been a standout." With Tom's support secured, Mike reached out to other handlers he had worked alongside over the years, each conversation reinforcing their shared commitment to these brave animals. One by one, they rallied behind him, sharing stories of their own dogs, offering insights into how military service shaped canine behavior. They discussed how stress affected not only soldiers but also their canine companions who witnessed the heart-wrenching realities of war. As more testimonies began pouring in, Mike felt the weight of hope lift his spirits. Each handler's account emphasized the instinctual responses bred into these dogs through rigorous training under extreme conditions. They were designed to protect and serve above all else. Their stories painted a vivid picture of dedicated soldiers refusing to leave their humans behind during chaotic missions, a narrative that resonated deeply with Mike's own experiences. One poignant story came from Sarah, another handler who had deployed with Rex on several missions. She recounted an instance when Rex had detected an IED just moments before it could have caused devastation among their squad. "He didn't hesitate," Sarah recalled. "He sprang into action without fear because he knew his job was to protect us." Her words echoed in Mike's mind as he envisioned how this moment could illustrate Rex's bravery rather than mere aggression. The testimonies began forming a cohesive narrative, a powerful defense of Rex's character as a loyal soldier who responded instinctively to threats as any trained operator would. Each handler emphasized that aggression, often seen as a flaw, was just a misunderstood reaction born from years of service and trauma. With this growing collection of support, Mike began piecing together the elements of his presentation more confidently. He visualized how their stories would intertwine during his pitch before the shelter board, an emotional tapestry revealing not just Rex's instincts but also his unwavering commitment to those he served alongside. As he prepared for the presentation day, Mike made sure to involve each handler in some way, whether it was through video calls or written statements that could be included as part of his visual presentation. He wanted them all to feel connected, to know their contributions mattered in this fight for Rex. However, amidst the excitement of gathering support came moments of doubt again. What if the board members remained unmoved by these heartfelt accounts? What if they were too entrenched in their misconceptions about aggressive behavior? Each negative thought threatened to overshadow his resolve. But as Mike reflected on the camaraderie and unity inherent within those who had served alongside military dogs, he found strength in these shared experiences. This wasn't simply about saving one dog, it was about advocating for all military working dogs whose loyalty and sacrifices often go unrecognized due to misunderstandings. The final days before presenting became filled with collaborative efforts as handlers shared anecdotes that highlighted the incredible abilities of military dogs while shedding light on challenges faced post-deployment. With every story shared came renewed determination for Mike to fight not just for Rex but for every unsung hero waiting patiently outside judgment's heavy hand. In those closing hours leading up to presentation day, Mike felt an unyielding sense of purpose envelop him like armor prepared for battle. He was ready to speak not just for himself or Rex but for an entire legacy deserving acknowledgement and respect within a world quick to judge based on brief moments rather than understanding context forged through shared hardships over time. Together with his allies standing firm beside him, Mike steeled himself, they would shine a light on what it truly meant to serve with honor. Together they would reclaim dignity for every brave soul fighting against ignorance born from fear alone. As the days passed and the presentation loomed closer, both Mike Thompson and Rex felt the emotional toll of their shared journey intensify. For Mike, the weight of advocating for Rex not only stirred a fierce determination within him but also unearthed memories of his own battles, both on the field and within himself. As he prepared to speak for Rex, he found himself confronting his past in ways he had long kept buried. Every late-night practice session brought forth flashbacks of his time in combat, moments filled with chaos and fear that were often overshadowed by the loyalty of his canine partners. The bond he had shared with Buddy, his explosives detection dog, was a constant reminder of what true companionship looked like amid adversity. Mike could feel the echoes of those experiences resonating within him as he envisioned how similar Rex must have felt during his own deployments. Rex, too, was grappling with his own emotional scars. The label of dangerously aggressive hung over him like a dark cloud, suffocating any sense of normalcy he once knew. In his kennel at the shelter, Rex paced anxiously, his body tense as if anticipating the next threat that might arise. He didn't understand why he had been placed in this situation after serving so faithfully. The confusion blended with fear sent waves of distress coursing through him, feelings that mirrored Mike's own struggles as a soldier returning home. The bond between them deepened as they each faced their pasts. Mike's commitment to Rex became intertwined with his own journey of healing. He recognized that through this fight, not just for Rex's life but for other military dogs facing similar misunderstandings, they could confront their shared trauma together. In quiet moments before bed, Mike often found himself reflecting on how their fates were irrevocably linked. Rex was not merely a dog to him, he was a reflection of every soldier who had served alongside their canine counterparts and faced judgment without understanding. This emotional connection drove Mike to fight harder for Rex's future. As Mike finalized his presentation, he made sure to include heartfelt anecdotes highlighting their parallel experiences, their shared struggles against fear and misunderstanding. He reached out to handlers who had witnessed Rex in action, asking them to share moments where Rex had exhibited extraordinary courage despite overwhelming stress. These stories would serve as powerful reminders that aggression could be misinterpreted and that loyalty often coexisted with trauma. One evening, while speaking with Sarah, another handler who had deployed with Rex, Mike was particularly moved by her recollection of an incident that demonstrated both Rex's instincts and protective nature. He instinctively ran towards danger when it mattered most, Sarah recalled, her voice filled with emotion. That day, he saved lives even when no one else could see it. It was these moments that fortified Mike's resolve. He understood that presenting Rex as a soldier shaped by service would resonate deeply with the board members, not as a dangerous animal but as a brave companion who had faced real threats. Each story collected from handlers added depth to the narrative Mike sought to convey, one that captured both the essence of military service and the emotional toll it took on both soldiers and dogs alike. As presentation day approached, late nights filled with preparation morphed into moments of reflection for Mike. He spent hours thinking about how to articulate not just facts but feelings, the weight of sacrifice, loyalty in the face of danger, and the unbreakable bonds formed between men and their dogs. The morning of his presentation arrived, and Mike felt an unshakable sense of purpose settle within him like armor against uncertainty. He looked into Rex's eyes before leaving for the shelter board meeting. There was an understanding between them, a shared acknowledgement of their journeys through darkness toward redemption. With every step towards the shelter boardroom, Mike felt the heartbeat of their collective story driving him forward. This wasn't just about saving one dog, it was about reclaiming dignity for all military working dogs whose sacrifices often went unnoticed or misunderstood due to fear-based judgments. As he took a deep breath before entering the room, Mike grasped the truth that had become clear through this challenge. Confronting their pasts together had created an unbreakable bond between him and Rex, a bond forged in adversity that now fueled their fight for understanding and compassion. It was time to show the world what it truly meant to serve alongside these remarkable animals, to honor their sacrifices while shining a light on their unwavering loyalty amidst turmoil. With determination ignited within him like fire ready to bloom, Mike stepped forward into advocacy grounded in love and respect for every unsung hero waiting patiently beyond judgment's heavy hand. Together they would illuminate stories woven through hardships endured side by side, a testament to honor worth fighting for in every sense imaginable. The day Mike Thompson had prepared for had finally arrived, and as he stood outside the shelter boardroom, the weight of the moment bore down on him. With a steadying breath, he felt the familiar surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was not just a presentation, it was an opportunity to advocate for Rex and illuminate the deeper meanings of loyalty and service. The stakes were high, but Mike was ready to fight for Rex, ready to reclaim dignity not just for one dog but for all military working dogs overlooked and misunderstood. As Mike entered the boardroom, he was met with a long conference table lined with board members. Some appeared skeptical, others curious. Each face reflected a different perspective, and Mike understood that he needed to engage them from the very start. He began his presentation with a clear, confident voice. "Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak today," he began, looking around the room to establish a connection. "Today, I'm here to advocate not only for Rex, but for every military working dog facing similar challenges after serving their country." He could sense their attention wavering slightly as he started with the facts, recounting Rex's background as a dedicated military working dog. The tension in the room thickened as he shared what had led Rex to be labeled as dangerously aggressive. He skillfully framed Rex's actions within the context of military training and combat experiences, explaining that these responses were instinctual and rooted in a desire to protect. To illustrate his point, Mike shared personal anecdotes from his time in service, particularly his bond with Buddy during harrowing missions. With palpable emotion in his voice, he described how Buddy would instinctively shield him in moments of chaos and uncertainty. Just like Rex, Mike emphasized, Buddy acted from training and an ingrained desire to protect his handler. As he moved deeper into his presentation, Mike strategically interspersed emotional stories from fellow handlers who had worked alongside Rex. He recounted Sarah's testimony about that critical day when Rex detected an IED before it could have caused devastation among their squad. Rex didn't hesitate, he acted out of loyalty, Mike articulated passionately, making eye contact with each board member as he spoke. "This is not aggression, it's instinct shaped by experience." Mike sensed that these stories were resonating, so he continued to weave the narrative of bravery that military dogs like Rex embodied while addressing misconceptions about canine behavior. With sincerity brimming from within him, he discussed how stress could lead dogs to react vigorously, not out of malice or brokenness but as a natural response developed through combat training. "The label dangerously aggressive is misleading," he asserted firmly. "It diminishes Rex's experiences and sacrifices made in service to our country." At this juncture, Mike pulled up video footage highlighting Rex's heroism during deployment, moments frozen in time where his instincts shone brightly amid adversity. As clips rolled across the screen, showcasing Rex's dedication during actual missions, Mike felt emotions swell within him. The pride and honor they both shared became palpable. The atmosphere shifted, Mike noticed furrowed brows beginning to soften. He seized this opportunity to press further into the hearts and minds of those listening. By humanizing Rex's character and framing him as a soldier deserving of empathy rather than fear, he was making strides toward altering their perceptions. However, amidst the flow of confidence came moments of doubt creeping back into his thoughts. What if they still didn't understand? But every time such fears surfaced, Mike recalled Rex's unwavering loyalty and his own journey through healing and drew strength from that connection. At last, as Mike closed his presentation with heartfelt conviction, he left room for questions and discussion. Rex has faced significant challenges because of misunderstanding. It's our responsibility now to ensure that we see beyond surface behavior and recognize loyalty intertwined with trauma. His voice remained steady despite the gravity of what was at stake. When board members began asking questions, Mike responded thoughtfully, each answer underscoring what made military dogs unique companions deserving respect. He referenced data collected about how many military dogs experience anxiety post-deployment and how they often require understanding rather than judgment. With each interaction building upon his initial points while forging deeper connections around shared values of honor and sacrifice in service, it became clear that Mike stood not just for Rex but also for countless others whose contributions often remained hidden. Finally, after what felt like hours had passed in mere minutes filled with reflections on courage amid judgment, Mike realized they were nearing an end. As conversations drew toward resolution, there was hope blossoming, a sense of possibility that perhaps perceptions around Rex could begin to shift. Looking down at Rex waiting in the next room, Mike couldn't help but feel pride for how far they had traveled together on this journey. Whatever outcome awaited them at the conclusion of today's presentation would hold lasting consequences, not only shaping their futures but potentially transforming narratives surrounding military dogs everywhere through understanding born from love and experience shared along treacherous paths traveled side by side. In that moment, surrounded by allies strengthened through shared commitment, Mike knew their fight transcended individual histories. It echoed as a testament to honor worth fighting for, both for Rex and countless unsung heroes waiting patiently beyond judgment's heavy hand. As the presentation came to an end, the room remained suspended in a quiet tension, the board members exchanging glances filled with contemplation. Mike Thompson stood before them, heart-pounding but resolute, knowing he had poured every ounce of his commitment and passion into advocating for Rex. He had shared stories of bravery, loyalty, and service that spoke not only to Rex's character but also to the broader issues faced by military working dogs after their service. Yet, despite Mike's compelling arguments and heartfelt testimonials from fellow handlers, uncertainty hung in the air. The outcome was still unclear. They were left hanging in a delicate balance between compassion and fear. Would the board understand that Rex was not just a product of a single moment of fear but rather a soldier shaped by experiences that demanded instinctual reactions? As Mike prepared for the board's questions, he couldn't help but reflect on the emotional journey that had brought him here. Confronting his own past while fighting for Rex forged an unbreakable bond between them, two soldiers navigating their struggles together. Every story shared, their shared traumas, had served as both a reminder and an affirmation of how deeply intertwined their fates had become. The first board member spoke up, breaking through the silence. "Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Thompson. You've made some compelling points about the training military dogs undergo and how stress can impact their behavior." There was a hint of skepticism in her tone, yet also a glimmer of understanding. Mike seized this moment. "Rex has given his all in service to our country," he emphasized, looking around at each member. "He deserves not just our understanding but our compassion. His actions stem from a place of loyalty and instinct honed through years in combat situations." The questions flowed steadily after that, some probing deeper into Rex's training and others reflecting on his past incidents labeled as aggression. Each time Mike responded thoughtfully, drawing on personal stories and data he had gathered about military dogs facing stress-related challenges after returning home. "Can you explain how Rex's behavior during those moments might be misunderstood?" another board member asked. "Absolutely," Mike replied earnestly. "When soldiers face high-stress situations, they often react instinctively as well. It's survival, whether it's a person or a dog. Just as we might misinterpret their reactions without context, we must extend that understanding to our canine partners too." As he articulated these points, Mike could feel the atmosphere beginning to shift, the board members leaning in slightly closer as they absorbed his words. He shared more anecdotes from his time with Rex and other military dogs. Each story painted vivid images of bravery under pressure where loyalty reigned supreme. Yet amidst this growing momentum came moments of doubt creeping back into his thoughts. What if they ultimately did not see Rex as deserving of compassion? What if their preconceived notions about aggressive animals overshadowed everything he had presented? To counter these anxieties, Mike reminded himself of Rex's unwavering spirit, the loyalty rooted deep within him that mirrored Mike's own experiences as a soldier navigating life after service. This fight was not just about saving one dog, it was about advocating for countless others like him who had served honorably yet faced misunderstanding upon returning home. Finally, as discussions continued to unfold around him, drawing toward conclusions, Mike felt hope blossoming within him despite the uncertainty lingering in the air. Each question asked by board members morphed into an opportunity for connection, a pathway toward reshaping perceptions surrounding military working dogs. Toward the end of the meeting, one board member finally posed what felt like the pivotal question: what do you envision for Rex if he is given another chance? This question resonated deeply with Mike. It encapsulated everything he hoped for, not just for Rex but for all military dogs deserving rehabilitation and understanding after serving in combat scenarios. "I believe Rex can find peace and purpose again," he said passionately. "With proper care and support, he can continue making positive contributions rather than being labeled simply as dangerous." As anticipation hung heavy in the air following this final remark, Mike looked down at Rex waiting patiently outside, a loyal companion who had faced battles alongside him both on the field and off. He silently hoped that today would mark a turning point, not just for themselves but for every unsung hero who bore scars invisible to most yet worthy of acknowledgement nonetheless. With no clear resolution yet reached, the meeting concluded with promises of review and further discussion among board members regarding their decision on Rex's fate. As Mike left the room feeling both hopeful yet uncertain, the weight of possibility loomed large before him. The journey ahead remained filled with unknowns. However, one truth rang clear: understanding breeds compassion, and together they could advocate not just for one dog but illuminate paths toward rehabilitation for all those who served bravely amid combat's harsh realities. In this moment filled with hope intertwined with uncertainty, Mike Thompson stepped forward from the boardroom, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead while embodying resilience cultivated through hard-won connections forged alongside loyal companions willing to fight against ignorance born out of fear alone.